I'm Heather. After many wasted years trying outdated approaches to my daughter's addiction that felt wrong to me, harmed our relationship, and didn't help my daughter, I finally found an effective, evidence-based approach that repaired my relationship with her, helped me create my own peace of mind, and made me an ally in my daughter's recovery. I teach you a loving and compassionate approach to help you encourage change and create connection. Addiction impacts the entire family system. Family recovery is the answer. Today's guest is Catherine Becker, along with her daughter, Katie. Catherine is the founder of the nonprofit group Joys and Challenges of Relative Caregivers. Originally, it was just supposed to be me and Catherine doing this interview. And recently, things have changed in her life, and I got to talk to and meet Katie to get a little bit better understanding and background of their story and experience. And it really touched my heart to hear this family's story and what they're going through. And I also really admire that there was this need in Catherine's life, and she knew that other people needed it. So she created that for herself and the other families that needed it. She started the group in November of 2021 because, as I said, she needed support. She was adjusting to this major life change of raising her grandchildren. And she came to the realization that her daughter had a reoccurrence of use when her grandson was born with methamphetamines in his system. She tried many Facebook groups for grandparents that were raising kids, but there were just so many members, thousands of them in the group. So it was really hard to form personal, close relationships with the other members. So that's why she started her own community. And as her group grew, they started providing more than friendship and connection. They started raising money to help members that were struggling financially. And then in November of last year, the group officially became a nonprofit organization. They have application-based programs for families, including a diaper fund, financial assistance, clothing fund, school supply fund, an emergency child move-in fund. They sponsored 68 children for Christmas and provided 17 families with gift certificates for Christmas dinner, which I think is just amazing that this idea of hers grew so fast and they were able to help so many people. It just goes to show how much one person can do. In addition to offering speakers and a live chat, the group also recently added a 24/7 online interactive forum. They understand that a crisis can occur at any time, day or night, and they want to be there for their members. There's always somebody on call to chat, play a game, help pass the time, or form a friendship. Everybody pitches in. There's no clicks, and the spirit of the group is to let members know that they are not alone, which is something that we all need. When I heard about Catherine and what she was doing last year, I knew that I wanted to share it with the podcast audience because I've seen friends and clients faced with taking care of their grandkids, and it's so complex. It just adds so much more to an already difficult situation with their kids, trying to navigate the grandkids now and how that affects their relationship with their kids on top of everything else that's already happening. So, Catherine's daughter, Katie, is joining us to share her perspective of what it felt like to lose her kids when her parents adopted them. And I think it's very touching that she shares this so openly and vulnerably because we don't always understand what somebody is going through in a situation like that. And I appreciate her being willing to share that with us because I think Katie's voice is really important in this conversation. It not only brings hope with her recent recovery, but she's helping us understand things that our kids are going through that are hard for us to understand without somebody telling us their experience. And a few months ago, Catherine could not have imagined that Katie would be in recovery, sharing parenting with her, and being a part of holidays again. So always remember that no matter how hopeless a situation feels, there is always hope. Your child can tell you 100 times that they will never go to treatment, and then suddenly they're ready to go. And next thing you know, you could be doing just those normal, everyday things with your child again. So I just want to put that hope out there to know that things really can change at any time. So I hope you enjoy today's episode. Hi, Catherine and Katie. Thank you for being here to help raise awareness about the complexity of what families experience when parents become relative caregivers to their grandchildren. I want to start with a question for Catherine. Let's start by going back to when you realized that you were going to be taking care of your grandkids full time. Can you give us a little background about how that started?
I can. Katie was pregnant with Elijah, and after she had him, he was born meth addicted. And the social worker that was involved told us that if we didn't make Katie leave, that she would take the kids. So we had to put Katie's clothes and everything out into the garage, and she put them in her car and drove away. And it was awful. But then we knew that day that we would be taking him forever. We actually took custody of Elijah before he came home from the hospital. He was in there for 8 days. So that's how that came about.
And then for a while, this had a big effect on your life, of course. You went from having grown kids to now you're taking care of grandkids as well. What did you and your husband have to change so that you could be full time parent figures again?
My husband started working from home, and I had to start working part time. I was actually working a job I really loved, but it was second shift. And so I had to quit that job to stay home with him until he got up big enough to put into daycare. Basically, everything about our lives changed. We used to go out. My husband is in a corporate position. And so I used to travel with him. And so, after the kids were here, there was no more of that. There was a huge change with everything. Our relationship, I wouldn't say that it suffered, but it certainly is different even today than it was 4 years ago.
Yeah, that's a huge change to go from being empty nesters to revving back up to take care of young kids again. That's a lot of extra energy output.
Yes, and I'm 62 years old, so it was a lot of extra energy output.
So the hardest part of this situation was how it affected your relationship with Katie. Like you were in this really difficult situation of having to put the needs of your grandkids above helping her, which, I mean, my heart just goes out to you for having to even be in that situation, or any other parent that has to be in that situation, because your daughter's your baby. That's your priority until suddenly you have to have this other priority. So, how did you work through that?
It was really difficult. I was so sad. Like I said, the day that she pulled away in her car with everything in her car, I didn't know where she was going to go, what she was going to do. I was sad. And then I got mad. I went through different phases of it because I was resentful that I was in that position. I had 100 different feelings going through my brain. I stayed worried about her all the time. That went on for until she came home, actually. But I started my support group right after that so that I could have the support from other grandparents.
Yeah. And Katie, so this was really emotional and complex for you as well. And I'm guessing that on one hand, you were grateful for your mom stepping in. And then on the other hand, it was painful that that happened as well. So, can you help us understand, like, because there's a lot of people listening to this that are going to go through this situation. Like, what were you experiencing when this happened?
I was just completely devastated in my heart. I mean, I had a son who was born on meth, and my addiction affected him, and I just relapsed, and I thought it was the end of the world, and it was the end of the world for me. I lost not only my kids who were my entire life. I'd been with them since the day they were born, all day, every single minute, to having to leave my mom, leave my kids, leave my newborn son, not even know my face. And moving forward over the next few years, I ended up going harder in my drug use. I went to rehab for a little while. I got out, I was clean for a month, and then I relapsed. Back on the streets again, back in motels again, back stealing again, doing what I was doing through my drug use. I quit talking, or my mom and I quit talking completely because every time we did speak, it was a humongous fight, of course. And I was so angry with her for the most part. My heart was just complete. How could you do this to me? How could you take my kids from me? How could you deprive them of that? When I was a good mom, I just was on drugs. And it never registered to me that I couldn't be a good mom on drugs. But I felt like I was living two different lives of using and still trying to be a mom and still trying to be a daughter. But my drug use showed. And then after a couple of years of back and forth with her, I would come for a birthday and I would come for Christmas, and then I'd leave and I'd go use. And recently, the biggest thing that, and mom and I haven't talked in so long. And every time we did, again, it was fighting, but I knew I couldn't come here. I had nowhere to go. I was in an abusive relationship. I was on fentanyl and meth. I lost almost 70 pounds. I was skin and bones. I was completely strung out. My mom calls me up one day and she said, "Do you need anything?" And I'm like, "Oh, this is set up. This is a complete setup." And she left 2 things of Narcan on my front door and drove away. And gradually I started talking to her. And over the years, the day that she took me to court for the adoption, I knew she wasn't going to get it. I'm just like, there's no way that they'll take those kids from me forever. There's no way. And he told me in the courtroom that day, he said, "Can you pass a drug test?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Granted to your mother." And I mean, I hit the floor and they had to drag me out of that courthouse. And when they did, it was like my whole life was taken from me. Every reason to live. And every day was hell. I had to find a reason to wake up every day. And I think that caused my drug use to be worse and I couldn't find a reason to go on. Sorry, this is really hard.
Yeah, that's okay.
I was so angry with her. I just couldn't understand why she would take them from me. And I just couldn't understand why I couldn't get better, why I couldn't stop using for the sake of my kids. I have these beautiful babies that need me, and I still couldn't quit using. And now I've learned since that I thank God that she took the kids and I couldn't take care of them. I couldn't take care of myself. I was in and out of jail. I couldn't function myself, much less raise 3 beautiful children who need a healthy, stable life. And she gives that to them. And I thank God for them now. But it took me over this period of few years to realize that and to know how happy they are and how safe they are and how grateful I am that they have this wonderful life now and that she's been able to provide that I couldn't.
Thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing that. I know that that's got to be really hard for you to talk about, but I think it's something that's really important to share and for people to hear because not everybody understands like what the thought process is that's going on, how hard this is for
It
everybody.
was a struggle for myself and for her, and I can't imagine what she was going through because I was just so covered with anger and just resentfulness and just I couldn't get past my own issues of, well, this happened because you're using, but yet you still won't stop using.
Yeah, that's got to be incredibly hard. So you recently went to treatment and got into recovery, and you mentioned that there were pivotal moments between you and your mom where she made it clear that she was there for you.
Definitely was the Narcan. The day she just randomly called me up, and again, I was in an abusive relationship and I was living in a motel, and she just randomly up and called me and she said, "I'm here for you." And I'm like, again, this is set up. And I'm like, "Sure you are. Okay, we've been through this before." And she said, "Come see the kids." And I was strung out, strung out, strung out. I've been up for 4 days. I'm completely just cannot see my kids. So I missed the visitation and I told her, I said, I can't see them. They can't see me like this. And she said, I understand. It's okay. I'm here for you again. And I'm like, well, she's not freaking out on me. She's not going off on me. And then the next day she sent a text, said, if you want to go to treatment, I'm here. I'll take you to treatment right now. You have somewhere to go. That took another week of me calling her, and we went back and forth on some phone calls, and she'd cry and she'd say, these kids need you. I'm here. And it took me that week to I got homesick. I called her from a motel room. We'd gotten an argument and I said, take me to treatment right now. Take me to treatment. And she showed up within 5 minutes and she put me in the car and she hugged me and she told me she loved me. She bought me a pack of cigarettes and there we went. And I never looked back.
It just makes me feel emotional because we get so many mixed messages about what we should and shouldn't do when it comes to helping our kids. And I'm a firm believer in always showing up with love and compassion and kindness, and that we should do anything to remove the barriers to treatment. And I shouldn't say anything. We shouldn't put ourselves in jeopardy over it. But we should do whatever we can to remove the barriers to treatment for our kids, make it as easy as possible for them without hurting ourselves in the process. And so I just want to point out what you were just saying about how helpful it was to you to have that feeling of love and that different support from your mom during that time.
I just needed to know that she was there. That's all I needed to know. And that she knew I was high. She wasn't shaming me. She wasn't putting me down. There was no argument. There was just, Katie, I'm here. She said, do you need anything? And I was like, well, I mean, I have no clothes because I lost all that weight. I said, I have no clothes. And she said, okay. And she dropped me off a little bag of clothes at the front door and drove off. Like I didn't want her to see me that way. And she said, are you ready to go treat me yet? I said, not yet. And she said, well, I'm here when you are. And she dropped the Narcan off. And she said, I don't want you to die. She said, I'm scared every day of waking up, not knowing where you are and knowing that I get a phone call any moment that you're not here. And she said, and that it broke my heart. I'm like, oh my God. But I knew at that point that I finally had something and somebody that was there for me, that my mom was back and there for me. And no, I wasn't ready for treatment yet. No, but I knew that in any moment that I called her that, are you ready for treatment? Not yet. She's like, anytime you're ready, I'm here. And that's all I needed to know, that she was there, and she was, that she loved me. That's all I needed to hear, whether it just, instead of arguing and fighting, and no matter what I said to her, just know I'm here, Katie. And I say that to every parent out there, just to let them know that you're there and that you love them. That was the main thing.
Yeah, that's powerful. Thank you. So what helped you, Catherine, to change your approach to show up for Katie differently during that time?
There was a little bit of history with that. She had gotten out of jail in November, and we had made the plan the whole time that I was going to her that morning, and I was going to drive her to Moultrie, Georgia, to a rehab. And when I called to let them know that I was on my way, they told me she had already left. And she went back into that abusive relationship, and she told me she wanted to use. And I went over there the next day, and I told her, I said, either you come with me today or I'm going to have to walk away. I said, I can't sit and watch you die. And so she came with me, and we went to she had to go and take some tests, and then she went back to stay with him again because she had nowhere to go. And then she changed her mind about rehab for 2 days, I guess. And then she decided to go. So they actually had a plane for her because they didn't want her to withdraw. So the rehab that she went to, they provided a plane ticket for. My husband took her to the airport, and she stayed there for 3 weeks, and she left. And I was angry with her. I needed her to get well. I was so tired of being sad and scared and mad because every time I would talk to her, she would be defensive and paranoid. And it was just part of the drug use. And I would get so angry with her. But when she called me that day, I had talked with her 2 weeks before that, and she had gone into the hospital because her blood pressure was low. Is that right?
My heart rate, or no, my heartbeat was, or no, oxygen. My oxygen level was down to 87.
So I started really realizing how close she was to dying because of the fentanyl and the meth use. And so I started seeing a counselor to help me if something were to happen to her to be able to deal with it. It was horrible. I started on 2 different medications, a heavy dose of Seroquel. I wasn't sleeping, I wasn't eating, I was a mess. And so when she called me that day and asked me to come and get her, I was on the road in 2 minutes. I couldn't imagine not having my child on this earth. I just couldn't imagine it. And so that's what I realized, that I had to help her. I had to be there, and I couldn't wear my feelings on my sleeve. And so when I saw her, it was awful. And we went to the emergency room and checked her in there. And I stayed with her until about 4 o'clock that morning. They finally made me leave. And then she went and detoxed. And we decided that her being here was better for her than to be in rehab or at a halfway house with the family support and the kids.
Mm-hmm. Which I appreciate you sharing that decision that you guys made as well, because it just goes to show that everybody has a different path to recovery, and doesn't look the same for everybody. And I think that sometimes we think it should only look one way. It's just every one size fits all type thinking, but everybody has their own path, and that Katie feels strongest with you at home.
I started Suboxone in rehab, or in the detox. They started me on that for my withdrawals because they were so bad, and it helped. And I'd been on Suboxone prior, and it was wonderful treatment for me before. Well, when I started on it coming off, I was trying to find a treatment that would take my insurance. And that was the biggest thing that we ran into, is nowhere will take Georgia Medicaid. So we called all these nonprofits and called and called and called. I mean, we called for days, and it was just one thing after another. Nobody, I mean, it's so hard getting into a rehab if you don't have insurance. That's another thing, is that for parents, it's just, we sat here for how many days looking for rehabs, and I couldn't go back to Moultrie, Georgia, because I wasn't currently using. So nowhere would take me to go to a rehab once I'd already detoxed out. So now that I'm home, I'm 47 days clean, and this has been the best, way more than rehab ever did for me. It's being here with them, and I go to the clinic every morning when I get up, and I do my daily dose of Suboxone, and I come home and I go to work, and life's just normal and calm, and I 100% believe that this is better for me than ever being in any rehab. And I've just had to learn how to start life over and relive again. I had to find myself, and I'm still finding myself. And like today, I got my very first paycheck, and I went and got a phone, my very first phone for myself. That may not seem like much, but for me it is. And so it's just baby steps that we're taking together. And I do outpatient on my tablet every day, and I do a class online, and it's helped so much. And just knowing that I have them there for me is just, we're just taking it day by day. But it's been wonderful.
We took a trip to Knoxville together back a few weeks ago with the kids, and we had the best time. And I realized that I had my buddy back, because Katie and I were always very, very close. And I had missed that so much. I always called her Katie Bug. And when she was using us, I've lost my Katie Bug. And now I've got her back.
She got in my purse the other day. I told her to get something out of my purse, and she's like, "Are you sure?" I'm like, "Go ahead." She said, "Do you know how long it's been since you've let me near your purse without going crazy or being paranoid?" I'm like, "Yeah, you can go through my purse now."
That trust is beautiful.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you're rebuilding trust. How else are you working through co-parenting now with both of you there? How are you navigating that?
It's interesting.
It is.
My daughters started calling my mother mom, and they called my stepdad dad. And of course, Elijah has been with my mom since he was born. I've seen him a handful of times, maybe five times max since he was born up until now, and that was only for maybe a couple hours at a time. So of course he didn't know who I was, which was extremely hard for me. But with Elijah, of course, he calls her mommy and calls Paul daddy, and that's all he knows, and that's all he'll ever know. But the girls, they call my mom. And well, now that I'm home, they're like, "Mommy on the couch, mommy in the kitchen, mommy," and so by the way they say it, we know who they're talking to. and they'll randomly say mama, or but they call Paul dad. That's their dad. Their dad passed away it was 3 years ago in November from a drug overdose as well. and fentanyl. And so that's the dad they've only ever known. So of course that's their daddy. And so we both know who's mommy. And Elijah, my youngest, he's 3. He calls me Katie. And so the other day he's not understanding why the girls are calling me mommy. And so he runs up, he's like, Mommy. I'm like, I'm Katie. And in time he'll know. And in time things will, but for now I'm Katie. And that's how it works. I mean, I don't deserve to be called mom because I didn't raise him. I'm his biological mother, but I didn't raise him. And now I'm just thankful that I have that opportunity to raise him and to be a part of his life and to meet him and see what he enjoys and find that relationship with him that I never have been able to have. And my girls, we have a blast. They're so glad I'm home. And every day this morning, my daughter wakes up, she said, I'll see you at 5:00 standard time, right, Mom? I'm like, yeah, 5:00, I'll be here. She's like, 5:00, you better be at that door. I was like, yes, ma'am. So
that is adorable. I love hearing this.
We're navigating it the best way we can. I don't step over boundaries that she's already set. I mean, when it comes to punishment and things like that, they know the rules. They know how things work and they respect me. And for the most part, they're 6 and 7. So, and they're both girls. So they have their own little, whatever they want to respect and their little diva stuff. But yeah, it works. It's working. And they're just glad to have me home. And my mom's glad to have me home. I'm glad to be home and to have them near me. But so we just have a schedule and life just is normal again.
We're actually looking for a bigger house. She's in the bedroom with the girls, and I want them to have their space back.
She's like, you're pushing me off the bed now, Mom.
I would like to find a house with an apartment so that maybe with 2 bedrooms so that the girls can sleep with her. So I mean, it really works, and it amazingly works. The kids are they're happy, and it's not like it's messed with them with her being home. And we just talk positive. Everything's going to be great.
Yeah, Kaya said, today's day 43, right, Mom? And today's day 40. And she doesn't really understand, but she knows I've been gone. And the hardest thing that I ever had to do was call them from jail on a video visit. It was Mother's Day. And I'm like, I'm looking at them from a screen in jail, and I'd served 6 months. And I'm like, Mom, you'll be home soon. Mom, you'll be home soon. And then I'm out using drugs. Mom, will be home soon next time. And so they knew at that point they would see me maybe here and there. Okay, yeah, Mommy's promises, whatever. On their birthday, I would leave them roses in the back of the truck and drive off, so they wouldn't see me the way I was. So now they're like, Mommy, you're going to be at this birthday, right? I'm like, of course I'm going to be there. You're going to be home at 5:00, right? Of course I'm going to be. I'm home at 5:00 every day. I'm coming home. And so now they know I'm actually coming home and I'm coming back and I can be there and they can trust me again because they didn't before, and nor should they. I would say I'd be there and I wouldn't ever.
I can just see and feel the love and healing that's happening in your family. I think it's really beautiful. And I appreciate that you're sharing this for other families, because there are a lot of families experiencing this right now that are trying to navigate it. And I think I like being able to offer both sides of this. So, Catherine, there's the other layer of this that's also complex with your relationship with your other kids and the time and attention now you have to give to your grandkids, and there's some strain there. How are you managing that part of this?
I have not had a relationship with my son in 3 years. After we took the kids, he felt like that I was enabling her by taking the kids. And what he said to me was, if you would put them in foster care, then she would have to get clean. She would have to go get them. I'm like, that's not how that works. Unfortunately, we can't do it like that. And so he just broke off his relationship with me. And so I have not actually even heard his voice in 3 years. He's 38. He has 2 of my grandchildren. I haven't talked with them either. My oldest daughter, she's a little better. She kind of goes in and out with it. She has 6 kids of her own and a grandbaby who's my first great grandbaby. And I don't get to see them a lot, but some of it too is that she works all week. And on the weekends, we have things going on. We just can't seem to get together. So I never really know where her head is with it, but their father died recently, and all 3 of my kids got together at his funeral and talked, and I think worked it out to.
We did. Of course, I haven't seen my brother or sister in years, and all they know is the crap that I've been through, going to jail, using drugs. So we got to spend some time together, and us all three being together for the first time. And I can't tell you how many years. I mean, probably 6 years. Of course, they both just started crying when they seen me, and I was still recently newly clean. And my brother at the funeral, he said, "Dad, all Dad ever wanted was you to be healthy. He worried about you." And I mean, it broke my heart. But I think from that moment on, as far as my sister, she's always been really jealous of mine and mom's relationship to begin with. So we're both girls, and we've always been fighting over her attention. I guess that's how that works. But she's getting better with it. I try and text her every other day. I'm like, "I heard Mom talk to you. Are you feeling better?" Things like that. So we're trying. She's just a brat. So that's kind of where that goes.
I'd call her a brat.
Yeah.
And that's family dynamics right there, right? Like it's hard enough, right? With just everyday life with kids and those dynamics, but then you add all this complexity on top of it. And I know that there's other relative caregivers listening to this podcast. So what would you suggest for other families going through this, Catherine? What would you want them to know, or what would help them the most?
What I would say is basically what Katie said. Just love them. Let them know that you're there. It's hard sometimes. It's hard to be there, and you have to have those boundaries. But if they come to you and they want that help, don't walk away, because that's something that you're going to regret way down the road. Just be there when they're ready. They're not going to do anything until they're ready to do it. So you've just got to wait, and you've got to love them, and you have to be ready to be there for them.
Yeah. And what about the challenge of like them just taking on their grandkids now and their life changing like that? How do you suggest they work through that?
The best they can. All of the kids that are with my grandparents, the grandparents group, they're all different. We have some, and a lot of the families who have a lot of health issues because of the drug use of the parents. And so what they're going through, I can't even relate to. It's terrible. But again, what I would say is just love those babies. Let them know that their parents do love them, that it's not their fault, and that the mom just can't help it. But everybody needs to be there. Everybody needs to be on board with that. And you need to be able to talk to those kids on age appropriate basis about what's going on. But you certainly don't want to turn them against their parent ever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And what do you think, Katie, for what would you like parents to know? Maybe you can help them understand or work through, like knowing that their child is feeling resentful that they have their kids. What would you offer for them?
Just know you're going to make it through it, that you're doing the very best thing that you can do as a parent for those babies or as a caretaker for those children. It's not about the mother or the father. It's about those babies, and you're doing your very best to do what's right, even if you don't feel that way. And you cannot help other people's actions. You can't. And it's so shitty that you're put in this situation, but you're going to make it through it. And again, we keep saying, just love them and love them. And I know that's going to be the hardest thing you can possibly do, because I understand how angry you are, but it's not them. They're not in the right mind frame. That's not your child. That's not your niece. That's not the person you know and love. And you have to understand that they're not in the right mind frame, and they won't be until they get help. No, our hearts go out to you, and it's going to get better. Just take it day by day. Just let them know you're there and that you can help them with treatment. And if these parents don't know how to turn for treatment, if their kids don't have insurance, call us, reach out to us, and we will help them find a treatment facility if we need to. We will do whatever we have to do to help on that end if we need to. And just, you're going to make it through it. And just know that those babies will thank you later. And you're doing the very best thing you can do.
Yeah, I keep hearing you guys saying to prioritize the grandkids and just love your child through it. And that's, I think, the most simple solution in this really complex situation. So, Catherine, any grandparents who are listening to this, do you want to tell them about your organization, how it works, how they can join?
Yes. The easiest way to join my group, if you'd like to do that, is to find my website. And it's JACORC That's Joys and Challenges of Relative Caregivers. The link to my Facebook page is there. The link to a lot of information is on there. It is still under construction. My husband is a network engineer, and it's kind of like having a roofer and you have a bucket in the middle. So I can't get him to finish it, but there's enough on there to where you can get into the group. We have 143 members nationwide and Canada, some of the best people that you could ever meet in your entire life. We have a chat line that there's always somebody on there to talk to. We play games. I'm actually getting ready to leave for a retreat with some of my grandparents on Tuesday. We've rented a cabin in Gatlinburg. We're really excited. This is our second year that we've done that. But it's a private group. You just ask to join and we will put you on there and you can just come on and just vent and say what you need to say. And you're going to make lifelong friends there. I can promise you that. They're wonderful people, every single one of them.
Yeah, and I'll put the link to that in the show notes as well. And you guys also help with some necessities as well, right?
Yes, ma'am. I have got a charity that I give away free clothes, shoes, toys. I've got some days I have so many donations, it takes me 3 days to go through. And people are so wonderful about donating baby clothes and other things like that. There's sometimes I have 100 pair of shoes, kids' shoes. So anybody who needs clothes, now if you are not in my area, which is in Georgia, I can ship things to you. We can get a good shipping price on those. Or what we can do is to find you somewhere where you live, and I can call and see if they can donate those to these people. I'm really good about being able to go on and find people who will do that.
That's wonderful. I just want to thank both of you for your time today and sharing this story. I know that it's got to be difficult to talk about, but I think there's a lot of people listening to this experiencing similar things that will really resonate with what you shared, and it will help them know that they aren't alone in this, and especially being able to find the organization that you created to support grandparents. So thank you both so much for doing this podcast today.
You're welcome. We really look forward to it.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you want to learn more about my work, go to heatherrosscoaching.com. If you want to help other parents who are struggling with a child's addiction, you can do it 2 different ways. First, you can share the podcast with them directly, or you can share it on your social media. Second, you can leave a review. Talk to you next week.